Well, folks, in the Minnesota 2026 open Senate seat, support is coalescing behind a single Democrat right now. There is a safe assumption to say that. With recent news that Ilhan Omar, the extremely progressive liberal representative from the state of Minnesota, has announced she is going to run for re-election in her congressional district, which is Congressional District 5, and she will not be running for Senate in 2026. There was a lot of news surrounding that, saying that she may be a prominent figure to run in this race. Now, we know Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan had announced within hours of the announcement that incumbent Senator Tina Smith will not be running. She came out and said, hey, I'm jumping in this race. You also have a more moderate member of the Democrat Party, Angie Craig, who is still considering a bid, but ultimately Omar has dropped out of this race. She was the big candidate where Republicans were like, hey, jump in this race. We want you in this race. Which means as of right now, Peggy Flanagan is going to be the most radical liberal that will be in this race. It is going to be a race between Angie Craig, a more moderate Democrat, still not great, but moderate Democrat, versus extremely left-wing progressive liberal. You know, the wing of the party that is pro-Hamas is kind of what we're talking about here. We can already see that support has coalesced behind Peggy Flanagan, with Al Franken, the former senator, throwing his support behind her. Keith Ellison, the current attorney general, horrible attorney general from Minnesota, throwing the support behind her, and current state auditor Julie Blaha throwing her support behind Peggy Flanagan. Now, this race does matter. Democrat Senator Tina Smith announced she's not going to seek re-election, leaving no incumbent in the seat since, I believe, 2006 was the last time that this seat did not have an incumbent in it. Now, Democrats hold a slim edge in the Senate nationally, but Republicans have a 53-47 majority. Now, we know that because in Minnesota it is a lean blue seat. They hold the edge in this state here. But the Republicans nationwide have a 6-seat majority as of right now. And so this is a must-hold seat for the Democrats if they want to decrease or increase their minority that they currently have. Now, Minnesota leans blue. It voted for Kamala Harris in 2020 by about 4 points. It voted for Biden by like 7 and voted for Hillary Clinton by about a point back in 2016. Now, in those same races, you can look at it. It voted for Klobuchar by about 16 points, voted back in 2020 for Smith by about 5 points. So this is kind of more of the margin I'm going to be looking at, probably 5 to 7 points in this state here. I think it can be competitive, but no Republican has won a statewide election in Minnesota since 2006. And Omar's decision to skip this Senate race and stay in the House is really shifting the solidification of the party behind Peggy Flanagan. Now, Omar is a extremely progressive squad member and was rumored to jump in this race, and Republicans would have loved to see Ilhan Omar in this race because we really felt that if she was in this race, it would be a competitive race at the top of the ticket. And, you know, Minnesota's Peggy Flanagan she's just weird. She's just weird. Let's just put it that way. She's just a weird lady. But she was the first to jump in after Tina Smith said that she was not going to be running. Peggy Flanagan is a Native American and has very strong ties to the DFL. She has extremely radical liberal policies. Extreme. Like we're talking about, she was huge behind turning Minnesota into a sanctuary state for transgenders, a sanctuary state for illegal immigrants and violent criminals. You know, you want to talk about people who supported putting tampons in the boys' bathrooms. You're looking at her right here. You're looking at her. Let's find her. Peggy Flanagan. This is what she is. This is her tribal name, her Ojibwe name, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. You know, this lady, but she has there's a lot of issues that she has. She has limited national profile and really is going to need to energize the urban voters and rural voters and decrease the Republican margin in a lot of those rural counties if she wants to win this election. Now, like we said, Angie Craig still mulling a race as of right now. She is known for winning in a tough district. We know Angie Craig, she won congressional district, what is this? congressional district number 2 in 2024 by roughly about 13 points. This was considered a toss-up state toss-up district at the time. Now, initially, this back in 2016, before redistricting, was between a Minnesota Congressional District 1 and Congressional District 2. Now it is more part of the, since it's been redistricted, it has really become a much more Democrat stronghold. She did represent it for I believe, a year. She had beat incumbent Representative Jason Lewis in that election. So she knows how to win in competitive seats. There's no doubt about that. And she definitely is a much more moderate appeal. I believe it's like my election prediction. Peggy Flanagan's top of the ticket. This is a lean Democrat state, which means it's within 5 points. If Angie Craig was at the top of the ticket, I would put this as a likely Democrat state. Now, ultimately, could Angie Craig be pulled to the left in a Democrat primary? No doubt about it, and she most likely would. But ultimately, you get to the general election, I think she would have a much broader appeal when she got to the general election versus someone like Peggy Flanagan. I think she'll have a much, much broader appeal. And we saw back in 2020, Tina Smith won the state by about 5 points. Go back to the special election. She won it by about 10 points. And that's where you could see a margin like this. This was back in 2018. That's going to be similar to what we're going to see in 2026. It was Trump's first midterm. Now, you also have one other person who's thrown her kind of thought about jumping in this race. Oh, and maybe she hasn't. Okay, officially, she has pulled out, said she is not going to. She, like I said, support is coalescing behind. Now, she hasn't endorsed Peggy Flanagan, but support is coalescing behind Peggy Flanagan. That is the reality here. Now, you jump over to the Republican side, and you have people like Adam Schwarzy and Royce White who are running. Now, Royce White, obviously, he's a former NBA player. He ran against Amy Klobuchar in the 2024 Senate election. He was also the candidate in the House. Let's look at the House election first in 2022. He ran against, Ilhan. Oh, maybe let's see. Oh, maybe he didn't even he must not have even got the Republican nomination. Oh, that's Dean Phillips right there. What am I doing? Let's look. Omar. Let's see. He must have run. Okay, yeah. He was eliminated in the primary. I see. But yes, moving forward to the 2024 Senate election against Amy Klobuchar. Royce ran against her. Lost by about 16, 17 points. Now, granted, against Klobuchar, that's actually a pretty decent margin. You look at past elections for Klobuchar back to 2018, she won by 24 points. You go back to 2012, she won by 34 points. Ultimately, but also, you had the wins of the Trump administration on the ticket. The Trump on the ballot really pulled out a lot of voters, but he still ran behind Trump by, 10, 12 points in this race? Now, Royce White is a self-described ultra-MAGA candidate who would most likely be backed by Trump allies like Steve Bannon and really is focused on anti-establishment. He is anti-establishment, known for kind of being a wrecking ball inside the Republican Party. And ultimately, I think he would be a horrible candidate. I do not think he is the best candidate to lead the Republican Party. He has a lot of controversies in his past. He's got some legal issues going on right now, and we actually made a video yesterday about this, talking about the fact that when he ran in 2024, over 70% of his donations, of the money that he raised for his campaign, went to pay credit card fees. You can go to the FEC website. We have I can link it up top, a link to the video. I'm just going to write down, we're at about 9 minutes into the video right now. We can put in a link to that video where we go through the whole case when it comes to Royce White and what we were able to uncover with paying out 70%. 70% of his total money that he raised went to credit card fees. Don't think you can trust someone like that. Well, then you can look at Adam Schwarzy, who he is a retired Navy SEAL. Let's find him right here. He's a retired Navy SEAL. He spent 21 years as a Navy SEAL and a former infantry Marine vet. Really, Adam Schwarzy, he's new to politics, but his big focus has seemed to be on national security, discipline, And there could be a serious appeal to moderates if he can avoid some of the ultra-MAGA rhetoric and issues and legal issues that Royce White has contended with. He needs to be a strong American First candidate, but also he needs to be able to pitch himself as if he wants to win, as a more moderate Republican who can reach across the aisle. He can work with independents. He can work with Democrats. He may be our best chance that we have to flip this seat. Because here's the reality that you have to look at it. There's a lot of people who are going to say, well, why aren't you going to go with the ultra-MAGA candidate? Why aren't you going to go with the candidate who's going to vote with the party 90% of the time, 99% of the time? Folks, we have to accept a reality. There is a couple seats right now that are controlled in the Senate, like Susan Collins' seat. If Susan Collins was not running in this election and you had an ultra-MAGA candidate in this election, you would see, look, Maine voted for Kamala Harris by 7 points. It voted for, okay, let's just look in 2020, actually. It voted for, in 2020, for Susan Collins by 8.5 points. In this same election, it voted for President Biden by 9 points. You're seeing almost an 18-point swing here. The reality is that you can either have a Republican who's going to vote with the party 85 or 90% of the time, or you're going to have a Democrat who votes with the party 2% of the time. Take your pick. I will take someone who's going to vote with the party 80, 85, 90% of the time over a Democrat every day of the week. And it is ridiculous and short-sighted for Republicans to say, well, if it's not going to be an ultra-MAGA candidate, I don't want them. I'm not going to vote for them. How idiotic, how petty, how privileged of you to sit back and say something like that. Sure, in a deep red state like Alabama or Kentucky or West Virginia or Oklahoma, can we demand that? Absolutely. But in a state that voted for Kamala Harris by 4 points, voted for Biden by 7 points, and in this last Senate election, voted for the Democrat by 5 points, and in the election before that, voted for the Democrat by 10 points, which is most likely going to be the margin we're going to see closer to that. How privileged of you to sit back and say that we're not going to support someone like that. You have to be pragmatic. That, purity over pragmatic. Sure, are there some things I disagree with Adam Schwartzy? I very much assume so. But I disagree with almost every politician on something. I disagree with almost every politician on something. So let's not be privileged. Let's not be petty. Let's be pragmatic. Let's elect someone. Let's expand the Republican majority in the Senate. Let's do what we can to make Minnesota a lean or a toss-up. Let's stop trying to go down this ideological purity line. Democrats are really starting to learn too. And we're going to look at this. I'm going to try and find this real quick. I had it opened a little earlier today. I was looking at this. Let's say, that was the let's find the YouGov. Here we go. Looking at a recent YouGov poll, and you can see that the Democrats are really starting to smarten up on a couple things. For 2028, Democrats prioritize electability while Republicans emphasize policy agreement. This could be an issue. Look, I'm all about policy purity. I'm all about making sure we have candidates that are going to support Republican initiatives and not have rhinos. But to slap the term rhino on anyone who slightly disagrees with a policy or the implementation of a policy is short-sighted. You're going to tear your party apart. You can see it happening with the tariffs right now. All of these conservative influencers who are ripping on anyone who disagreed with the rollout of Trump's tariffs and saying they can never be a part of the MAGA party ever again or the Republican Party. How short-sighted. You just got a 1.5 percentage points victory in the most recent election. Yes, did you have a landslide electoral victory? But nationwide, you won by 1.5 points. This wasn't a 7-point victory. You do not have the ability to do that. You don't have the ability to exclude people from the Republican Party. And you're going to find out real quick what it looks like if you really want to exclude people from the Republican Party. But you can see here, Democrats are going to prefer someone with electability over someone who has policy purity. Meanwhile, the Republicans are emphasizing policy purity over electability, which I disagree with. I agree that we should have electability over policy purity and policy agreement. Now, ultimately, there are going to be a lot of issues that drive this election here. A lot of things that you could almost say are out of your control in this election for statewide Republicans that are more in the national Republican column, where you're going to see things like the economy. How does Trump's tariffs, how does that play into this? Do Trump's tariffs end up raising costs at the end of the day? And ultimately, we're still putting a big tariff on China, which you're going to see some, definitely nowhere near what it was going to be when the full reciprocal tariffs were rolled out. But you could see some inflation due to tariffs with China. We import a lot of stuff from China, and raising the price of that, it could hurt the U.S. And now, granted, that's going to be short term, but it's how quickly can we get to a deal with China? How quickly can we get to a deal with China to get those tariffs down? How quickly are we able to create trade deals with these 75 other countries that are coming to the table? You know, if we are not able to export, we know the Trump tariffs during 2018 hurt farmers. And there ended up being farm subsidies that tried to make up for it, but ultimately it hurt farmers. But how could you make up for that? If you're able to renegotiate some of these trade deals in which you have other countries that are now going to be buying more agricultural products from the United States, more products and goods. We know, we take the tariffs off. You know, we may have a trade deficit with another country. There's no doubt about it. We have trade deficits with most countries. And that's what happens when you are the supreme power. You have trade deficits. That's how it works. But ultimately, if there are artificially induced trade deficits, or the margin of those trade deficits are artificially induced because of tariffs, VAT taxes, or non-tariff barriers, and we are able to reduce those, and then all of a sudden the demand for American products increases, great. But maybe there are going to be some markets where the demand does not increase, that our products are too expensive. The demand for our products are not high in certain markets. But I guarantee you, other countries remove their tariffs. They remove their taxes. They remove their non-tariff barriers. American products are going to have more markets to go to. You know, you look at healthcare. How is Democrats' push for healthcare and reform within healthcare going to really counter deregulation? We know there's going to be cuts to Medicaid. I am all about cuts to Medicaid. I think there should be work requirements. And see, when we call it cuts, it's just saying we want people to go to work. We want to make sure that the people who are receiving Medicaid actually qualify for Medicaid. But then you also have issues that like abortion rights, education funding, and crime that are going to dominate, that are going to come into play in these elections. Abortion rights seem to be a huge thing that state Democrats like to run on. You look at education funding. You look at the huge deficit that the Democrats are going to be putting us in. And that may play out more in the governor's race. That may play much, much more out in the governor's race in 2026 than it will the Senate race. But ultimately, what does the deficit look like for Democrats in the state? And we know that midterms favor the base that's motivated. And Democrats are motivated right now. The Republicans we're the party of low propensity voters, and we've talked about this a lot. We are the party of low propensity voters. We need to somehow figure out a way to drive out these voters even when Donald Trump is not on the ballot. And we know midterms are a repudiation typically of the party in power. We could see that. And with Harris's narrow tilt in 24, shows that she knows how to win, and Democrats can win in the state, but it's not a safe blue state. But there is definitely blood in the water here. But a bad year for Republicans may just put this race out of reach for them. And you can already see, it doesn't look like it's going to be a vicious primary for the Democrats. It could be a pretty good primary for the Republicans. But support is coalescing behind the Democrats. And the GOP, Adam Schwarzy, I believe, is going to be the best that we have right now. Or someone like a Jim Schultz. Or someone like a Michelle Fischbach could be a good... I thought Tim Pawlenty might be good, but ultimately we know he ran again in 2018. Didn't even win the primary, so maybe he was just embarrassed by that. But that is the rundown. And let's look at the polling real quick here. The political predictions have it as a likely or solid blue state. And this is actually the gubernatorial election. Let's look at this. The predictions have this as a battleground or a lean Democrat seat, with polling showing in the Democrat Party, showing that Peggy Flanagan leading by about 30 points over Angie Craig. Obviously, no statewide poll in general election, but that will come out as we get closer. So that is the rundown on Minnesota's 2026 Senate election. Omar is out. In the field is coalescing behind Peggy Flanagan. Who do you think is going to take it? Who do you think will be the Republican and Democrat nominee? Let me know your predictions down below. As always, like, subscribe, hit that bell. Make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. I appreciate you tuning in today. We'll catch you next time.